7 o'clock.
Good evening, everybody. Seeing now that it is 7 p.m., this will be called to order, the meeting of the Committee on Infrastructure, this being Wednesday, April 27th at 2022, being 7 p.m. in the automatic chamber and via Zoom teleconference. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda of the city's website for the meeting link. Alderman-at-Large Michael O'Brien, Sr., yours truly will preside. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Gavea.
Here.
Alderman Camo is here. Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Also in attendance, we have Alderman Klee. Looks like Alderman Tebow is on Zoom. Tim Cummings and Dan Hudson are also present.
I thank you, Mr. Clerk. And it's good to see everybody made it this evening, full attendance. Okay, at this particular time, I'll open up for public comment. Anybody in the chamber? Doesn't appear to be so. Anybody on Zoom would like to please put your Zoom hand up and we will recognize you. Seeing none, with nobody in the chamber, nobody with their hand raised on Zoom, we'll now move to communications. Oh, you need that. Okay, yeah.
Communication's been received from Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director, regarding the paint color for extended outdoor dining. Mr. Chair, would you like to suspend the rules to move that to the end of the meeting?
No, at this particular time, there being no objection, I'll accept the communications and place it on file. Any objections? Seeing none, be placed on file. But since this is current, so everybody knows, we'll put the discussion on the colors at the end of the meeting to discuss this particular communication. Okay, so now we'll have series of presentations. To some of the newer members and everything, we did have in the past, some of you may remember, we had 14 Court Street, other different things, being the lands, like I said the other night at the automatic meeting, the former Committee on Lands and Buildings, now modernly called Infrastructure. We like to keep tabs and basically finding out what's coming on, particularly with our structures. They do get, like everything else, if you owned a house and you didn't paint it, after several years, you got quite a cost. So therefore, to make sure that our structures are doing well and different other things, our roads and whatnot. So with that in mind, we're going to discuss tonight two items, parking garages and paving. So I would like to recognize the parking manager, Jill Stanfield. If you would like to come forward, you may sit in one of the seats and allow you to do your presentation. And I would like to have Director Cummings, Economic Development Director, with Ms. Stanfield. To whoever wants to go first, the meeting's yours, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. If we can give Jill Stansfield, the city's parking manager, just a moment to get situated. She has a PowerPoint presentation that she will be sharing screen in just a second with you all.
In the interim, I do have another agenda if anybody needs it. Okay.
And so, Mr. Chair, again, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. We have with us Jill Stansfield, the city's parking manager. With us participating via Zoom is Thomas Thordicetti, who is the civil engineering, specifically the structural engineering consultant that was retained to do the parking study. Just so you know, that's sharing on screen. We have a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to go over this evening. Just to give some people some context, the reason why we're here this evening is a few years back, we started this conversation, I would say 2.5, 3 years ago, about managing of parking and parking operations, parking policies. We came forward with a recommendation that we increase some of the meter fees and we increase some of the differing revenue that parking generates because it was below market. During that discussion, it was suggested that we get a parking management study done. We're currently underway with that. But part of that conversation, actually, Alderman Jetty, Alderman O'Brien, Alderman Dowd specifically asked for, and others, but I remember them specifically during that infrastructure and Board of Aldermen meeting, asked for a capital maintenance study on the garages, and particularly wanting to know what type of deferred capital maintenance costs we may have so we're maintaining our assets appropriately. So we went forth and we executed on that study, and we're here tonight to just give you a quick update as to what we discovered during that discussion and conversation and study, and ultimately try to plan next steps to maintaining these assets. I'll leave my opening comments with the one thing we don't want to do is be in a position where we're worried about the garages being condemned or the garages not being available for use, because it is significantly more to create and construct new parking structures. It's much more economical and much more efficient, and we're being better stewards of our public assets by maintaining this public parking infrastructure. So I'll give an example. The town of Natick, actually, in Natick, Massachusetts, neglected their parking garage. Their building official condemned the structure because it was unsafe. And it's costing them tens of millions of dollars to rehabilitate that structure because it went too far beyond its life. It's something I think, as a public manager for the city of Nashua, I want to make sure I'm doing the best I can to help guide this city in making good and informed and economically efficient type of decisions. So I was very happy that we executed on this, and I think we have a good understanding of what we may need to do in the coming years to keep the city's parking assets in good working order. So with that being said, Mr. Chair, I'll hand it over to Jill, and between Jill and I, we will walk you through some brief comments, a brief PowerPoint, and then hopefully open it up to comments.
Jill Stansfield, Parking Manager. I just quickly wanted to go through a couple of slides just to kind of introduce everyone. There's a couple of new faces to the department. Oops, this is the wrong presentation. Hold on, bear with me for a moment. Oh, there we go. It's set up like this. So just to start off with our staffing, we currently have myself, one parking manager. We have 2 full-time parking maintenance employees, 1 part-time maintenance employee, and currently we have 4 part-time parking enforcement specialists. The department objectives, first and foremost, customer relations and building those relationships with our customers. Parking permit facilitation, we oversee the daytime lease permits as well as the overnight on-street parking permits. Our office focuses on our meters, our pay station, equipment maintenance and repair. We're constantly working on our surface parking lots, our 2 parking garages, walking through those on a daily basis, cleaning, trying to beautify, looking out for safety issues and making sure accessibility. And enforcing the city parking laws. So we oversee the parking enforcement as well. And this next slide is just an overview of our parking zones and our current rates. I just wanted to share that with you folks. We have 3 zones currently. Our zone 1 is our Main Street and closest side streets, which are Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's a 90-minute limit for $1 an hour. Our zone 2, slightly off of Main Street, about a block off of Main Street. And the map is there, so you can kind of see those areas. That's our zone 2, Monday through Friday is the hours of enforcement for that, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. That is a 2-hour time limit, and that rate is 75 cents per hour. Our zone 3, which is the furthest away from Main Street, enforcement hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. There is no time limit to park in these areas, and that is 50 cents per hour. Our garage lease parking rates, our leasing hours are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. So outside of these hours, you can park in the reserved sections of the garages and the surface lots for free. The covered rate for those lease hours, $45 per month, and the rooftop uncovered is $30 per month. And our surface lot parking rate is $50 per month. And again, same hours, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Outside of those hours, folks can park in those reserved spaces for free.
And again, we have a separate parking study going on right now that focuses more on the management and the policies and the best practices we should strive to implement. This conversation this evening is going to be, again, focused on the parking structures and the garages themselves and the capital maintenance necessary.
I'm just pulling up for a second. Oops. Sorry, bear with me.
Director Cummings, while we're waiting, if I may, we have no overnight parking except in a very small permitted area. But I think it would be a good time to say, with springtime coming now and everything, we do have a telephone number if somebody was parked that needed one-time courtesy of overnight parking, that there is a municipal number that they can call, and they'll be placed on the list, and that would be a good time, I think, at this time, the public service to put that out there, you know.
Jill, do you want to explain how that works?
Yep, so the number to call is 603-589-3077. And the message will prompt you to leave the information needed, vehicle information, address, and you just leave that information. We do allow up to 3 days at a time. So if you needed a week, let's say, you'd have to call back after 3 days and we would re-add you to the list. You can also go on our website, nashuanh.gov/parking. Click on overnight parking, and that will bring you to our overnight parking page, which has all the information in the world about overnight parking here, permit information, how to file for an overnight exception, and all that good stuff.
I know it's Cinco de Mayo and graduations and other family events, you know.
And it's probably worth noting, in addition to the 2 studies I talked about just a few minutes ago and the current one we're discussing now, we undertook a very extensive overnight parking study last year, which I would suggest would be complementary to the management study that we got going on right now. It could be added as an addendum, but it was a very thorough study about whether the city of Nashua should look to expand quote-unquote overnight parking, and if it was to do that, how best to do it. That is also up on the website. I would encourage particularly the newer members of this body to look at that document, so you can at least be familiar with the past work and effort that's been done to document and study the issue, which I know is a very, very sensitive one for the city.
Very good, thank you.
Is this mine?
Yeah, that's yours.
Okay. And that can be found on that same section of the parking page under the overnight parking piece. Are we jumping right in?
You're going.
Okay, so this is a study that so the city went out and hired Thornton Tomasetti, and we actually have Josh with Thornton Tomasetti on the line too for any questions, technical questions towards the end of the presentation if there are any. We'll jump right in. So in 2021, the city of Nashua retained Thornton Tomasetti to provide a condition assessment of the Elm and High Street parking garages. The goal of this assessment was to establish current conditions of the garages, prioritize the necessary repairs, provide opinion of probable repair cost, and provide the maintenance plan for the next 20 years. And as Tim mentioned earlier, this came about as a request from the folks on this board to bring forth a capital improvement program for the garages. What Thornton Tomasetti did is they went through and basically prioritized the different repairs that we have. I'm just gonna stay high level here. So high priority repairs, these are critical. These are supporting elements of the garage. This is the structure. Moderate priority repairs, this is to prevent water, chloride infiltration, and staying on top of regular preventative maintenance. And then some lower priority repairs, more cosmetic, cleaning the facade, repainting walls and things like that.
So basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna see the study broken out in two different ways, and I asked for this to be done just to help kind of organize the conversation and also to get some direction from you all as to what your preferred approach would be. So essentially what you have is, one approach, which is you look at the structural work that needs to be completed and you do it in a single phase. We would be doing, basically the high and moderate priority type items. It would be essentially over this plan. You think of it as a 10-year plan. We would be doing years 1 through 8 first, and we wouldn't be tackling necessarily years 9 and 10, but it gives you a rough idea of to what would be included. Jill in the next slides will kind of go through what some of those itemized particular projects would be. But we would be looking at an initial upfront cost over this type of approach of about $2.3 million. I want to stop right now and just say a lot of these numbers were developed prior to the pandemic, our current construction costs, escalating like the way they are, not, inflation that we are having right now. These are ballpark figures. This is just the beginning. I would suggest it's gone up quite considerably. But it gives us an idea of order of magnitude of what we would be looking at. Ultimately, we would be looking at, a $200,000 to $300,000 per year cost if we were to take this approach, assuming we were to bond the money over a 20-year period. Or conversely, we could take the second strategy, which is, again, assuming we bond the money, we do all the work over a period of time. Again, I say 20 years, but this is a 10-year plan, so for the most part, we would be talking about years 1 through 10, and then repeating years 1 through 10 a second time with this one capital outlay. It'd be about $4.5 million, and you know, annually of about $200 to $300,000 worth of cost. Essentially, we would be repeating the work again a second time, and doing some other lower maintenance type items in this second option that wouldn't be included in the first option, again, to give us a complete strategy. Also, it should be noted that we would have some miscellaneous repair work that we would deem operational, that needs to be done no matter what. That should be part of our operational plan. And so that would be about, you know, approximately $25,000-ish. That would be above and beyond that 2.3 million that we would suggest would get capitalized, or something I want you all to be aware of.
So just to go through some of the moderate to high priority level items, in the Elm Street parking garage, structural repairs. We have leaking drains. We look at rerouting, replacing drain lines. We'd be looking at stair tower, stair riser, and door repairs. Repairing of cracked and spalled concrete, joint sealant and traffic membrane replacement and repairs, asphalt tripping hazards, expansion joints, replacement and repairs, window gaskets and crack chasing, and then we would also be looking at modernizing the elevator.
So I want to stop right now and just say, these would be the repairs that we would prioritize, where that would be in approach 1. The one thing I want to make sure everyone knows is this does not include, this is just a structural approach. This is to maintain the structural integrity of the building. This is deferred capital maintenance, because the big thing I want you to take away from this is water is our enemy, right? So water and water intrusion is what causes a lot of this type of damage. So really that's what this report focuses on. Inevitably, we will get the conversation. We want to improve the lights. We need to have lighting improvements. The $2.3 million figure I just talked about does not include any type of lighting upgrades or any type of upgrades. Someone suggests more cameras, better cameras, gate system, anything like that would be above that $2.3 million figure. This was just deferred capital maintenance to maintain the structure of the building, to make it safe and usable for the long term. I just want to make that very clear, so if you see a bond authorization request come before you in the coming months for a higher dollar amount, I'm going to say $500,000 to $1 million beyond the 2.3, it's probably to take care of these other items that we've heard the community ask for. And again, I'm not saying we will do that, but I just want to make sure that that's very clear so everyone understands.
Some of the lower priority level, including some of the facade repairs that would also be included in that single phase plan, would be painting of the doors, the walls, the stair towers, some restriping within the garage, and then some work to the brick work outside. And then again, some of the other items noted in the report, but were not included in the cost, as Tim mentioned, some lighting improvements, some landscaping, some of these things that we're already trying to work on in our office already. I do have the lighting vendor that we used probably about 7 years ago now, that came in and did some improvements to the lights, are gonna come in and do a trial for us in about 2 weeks, where they're gonna drop down a set of lights so we can actually take a look and see how well that will improve the lighting. And they're also going to do a section where they change out to LED lights, so we can also see how that looks. So we're working on some of these things in our office now. So some other things that we'll be trying to work on just under our regular budget if money allows. Working on some of the bird deterrents that we have and fixing those. At the end of the year, if we have any money left over, we may try to add some security cameras. We never have enough security cameras. And then at some point, potentially looking at expanding the parking office that's over there now. And then again, this is from the report. This is the breakdown of the high priority repairs versus moderate and low priority repairs. Again, a lot of what we already covered, but the complete list from the report. And then we can jump into High Street Garage.
So then again, taking that same type strategy, what we just discussed was only costs associated to the Elm Street garage. This is costs now associated to the High Street garage. Again, first, that 1 to 9 year, so a little bit different from Elm Street, but essentially the same type of plan. We do that 1 to 9 years, all up front over a 2-year period. We'd be looking at 1.7 million. Again, that would be that high to moderate prioritization. We wouldn't necessarily be looking at the lower priorities. We would be front-ending the project to the major items. And then if we were to take the second strategy, if that was the decision, again, this is a 10-year plan, but we would be paying for it over 20 years. Our upfront cost would be about 3.7 million. Again, it would be the same type of strategy where we would try to get through the first 10 years and then repeat. And we would be doing, predominantly the entire work scope, high, moderate, low, through the 20-year period as outlined. And as you can see, we would have an annual cost about on 3.7 of about 185,000 of debt service if we were to do this. With the 1.7, we're probably more like a 75,000 or 50 to 75,000 annually if we were to do it through strategy number 1. Again, the $25,000 miscellaneous repairs would be separate and above and beyond. I consider those operational, not capital, but just good things to do to keep the building in good working order. Was recommended. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. A lot of these numbers I put out there, but I want to caveat that with that, we're in new times, construction costs are going up, inflation is going up. This is just to give us an order of magnitude so we get a sense of what we could potentially buy, but I suspect this would be, a little bit higher. They say on year-over-year compounding between inflation and construction costs, I would add 20%, 15 to 20%. So it gives you a little idea of what we would need to add on to this to make it somewhat a market attractive type number.
So again, a lot of this is the same as the Elm Street parking garage, the High Street parking garage for structural repairs. Again, moderate to high priority level under the single phase plan would include addressing leaking drains, rerouting and replacing drain lines, stair towers, stair risers, doors, repairing of cracked and spalled concrete, joint sealant and traffic membrane replacement and repairs. Again, asphalt tripping hazards, expansion joints, replacement and repairs, and then again, same with the other garage, elevator modernization. Just to also let everyone know, these elevators in both of these garages are the age of the garages. So they are definitely on the red list for the elevators in the state. So they've lived their life and they definitely need to be modernized. The Elm Street parking garage, just for folks that may not know, was built in 1984 and 85, I believe. And then the High Street parking garage was in 78, 79, I believe. So the elevators are old and definitely need some work.
And also important from an ADA perspective. So we want to maintain our ADA compliance and whatnot, so we have to keep that in the forefront of our mind.
And then again, some of the facade repairs that are included in the single phase plan, lower priority level, but again, important, painting of doors, walls, stair towers, restriping, and again, work on the brickwork. And same as with the other garage, the items that are not included in cost, but that were noted, lighting improvements, landscaping, bird deterrents, additional security cameras. Also to note, at the High Street parking garage, we do have a snow melter system on the rooftop. Here at Elm Street, we actually push the snow off the side. We work with the DPW to coordinate that effort. When they're coming down this way, they'll let us know, and we work together to facilitate that. But at High Street Garage, we have a snow melting system, so we're able to actually melt the snow over there. That is also the age of the garage, I believe. So it's working. We've kept it up, but it's definitely aged.
It's beyond its useful life. And again, I cannot disclaim this enough, because I know inevitably a member of the public will say, you're doing all these improvements to the garage, we care about lighting. That's all well and good. That's not part of the numbers that we're talking about this evening. We would need to add on to what it is that we're talking about. This is just to maintain the structural integrity of the garages.
It's not catching up. There we go. Again, just the similar upcoming and preventative maintenance. Again, prioritized high, moderate, and low. The same items that we just went through, just a little bit more in detail. And then again, just the costs between each garage, doing it in a single phase type plan or doing it over the 20-year span.
Basically, these numbers include the contingencies and the various escalation that would be necessary. I should note also, we talked about this quote-unquote pilot for the lighting. That's in the High Street garage. We're doing that to try to be responsive to the neighborhood and the community that we heard that, you know, we want to make improvements. So we are trying to actively work on that, and I just want to make sure that I noted that that's actually something we're piloting right now in the High Street garage, where we're taking the lights and we're dropping them down, as Jill said, to assess whether that minor type of improvement could actually pay dividends. It might be a very economical way to try to improve the lighting before we take on a more ambitious plan. So I believe that's it in terms of the official presentation. We wanted to keep it to 15, 20 minutes. Hopefully we kind of stuck to that. I'm going to ask Jill, actually, could you pull up the study in itself so people can actually see where it is? Because this study that we're referencing is on the city website, and anyone can have access to it. So I would encourage people to peruse it. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, we're available if there's a question.
Okay, I'll open up to questions. Alderman Dow.
And just curious, would you put out a RFP and get bids from general contractors to do this work?
Would we? Yes. Yes, we would.
Any other questions? I do have one, and today went down to, took the grandchildren down to Legoland and parked at one of the garages. And this system was quite unique, you know. I think, as I said earlier, you could put your debit card or credit card into the thing, it opened up, no ticket. Like when I go to the hospital, you gotta keep the ticket. You always lose it anyways, you know. But this was all done with the credit card. And even in the garage itself, there were lights, and it showed, must be a sensor, that the spot was open. So you could look down and you could see it. So I think we're on the cusp of looking at a lot of things here and using smart technology that is out there. And if we're investing, in my opinion, I think I added the two numbers up, it's under $10 million. You know, we're about 7 million, you know, plus, north of 7 million. But when you get a bond, you have a little bit of flexibility with that. My point is, I'd be really interested if you come back with the A-list, you know, of Rilling, because here's my point. When the Performing Arts Center gets built, there's one thing I do not want is people to say that the parking in Nashua was terrible. we always known that we've had extra spots in the garages and stuff. So, you know, our garages are sort of like the postcard of welcoming, that when people come down to the Performing Arts Center, that they will see, you know, something like that. So I'd be really keenly interested, you know, shoot the moon, and then we could do what we do best, cut back from there.
Understood, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Gavera. Alderman Gavera. Thank you, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to agree with what Alderman O'Brien had to say on the matter. Working on High Street at an establishment, I know you've had to deal with them before, and I hear a lot about parking garages. A good chunk of just people trying to find parking to get to our location and feel safe while doing it. And we've definitely heard a lot of issues from especially our location being also a casino, people walking with larger amounts of money through parking garages at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning when they're getting out. So safety's always been a big thing. I would have to agree, looking at probably the A list if we're gonna do it, and then kind of chomping down from there. I think it would be a good line of approach. We get a lot of people from out of the area who, when they come to one of our venues, this is the first thing they see is where they're gonna park. And with the School Street lot now gone, it limits a lot of other surface options that we see, and a lot of them have to result to that garage. So spending a little bit of money to make it look nicer, I think, in the long run could be worth it for not just where I work, but a lot of the other establishments on High Street and that surrounding area.
I think the technology exists today that an app could have, and one could look at the app and say, how many spots are available at High Street? And dive right in there.
So you guys are making me very nervous. I get Jill getting excited here. I have to keep her on a short leash.
Yeah. Alderman Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I say let Jill go. Because the truth is, I think what both Alderman O'Brien and Alderman Goye said, it is important for us to know everything that needs to get done, as well as the wish list. And we hear from the constituents what their fears, what their anxieties are about these garages. And one of the things the Performing Arts Center is going to be focusing on this. I can tell you that I am now a member of the Palace Theater. I have a membership there. And I've been going to a lot of the Rex Theater, and I've been going to that. And I used to run around trying to find parking. When the Citizens Bank parking lot became unavailable, so to speak, it was, where do I park? And I used to park way over by the fire station, and I would walk. I walked in the rain, I walked in the snow, I did all kinds of things like that. I have stumbled across the parking garage that's right there next to the Rex Theater, and I love it. It's easy in, easy out. You come in one door, you can go out the back door there. I sit there, I punch in my number for my parking app, I pay right there. I don't have to look for any meter, there's no tickets, there's no any of that. It's clean. It's, you know, the stairwells are stairwells. Always live a little anxiety. I don't care how well lit they are. There's always trash there and so on, but it's still a good thing. I'm remarked by what they have there. So I would like to see a giant wish list. I would like to see, these are things we need to keep the building up. These are things we need to keep the building safe, which would be lighting, which would be cameras, which would be fixing the stairs and so on. I have two questions though. When you put the opinion of the probable cost, construction cost by garage, that was pre-pandemic cost.
Correct.
So we can look at a much higher cost than this. I just don't want the public to see these numbers, and then when, like you said, you come back with the real bond saying, these numbers jumped from that meeting. We hear that all the time. You know, you came in and said this is what you were gonna need, and you ended up doubling it. So I just want everybody to know these are just kind of numbers that are thrown out that were good at the time, but not necessarily right now.
Right, they're just a good frame of reference.
And the other comment I want to make was, at the Elm Street Garage structural repairs, I don't know if anybody has that there, I just have to ask, is that duct tape on the corner of that, or is it some kind of sealant?
The picture?
The picture of it, I was thinking, oh my God, is that duct tape? Are we now duct taped taping these? Or is it some kind of sealant?
No,
Oh.
that is a sealant.
Oh,
That's
good,
not
thank goodness.
So that would
I was
have
gonna say, I hope it's Gorilla Duct tape at least.
been, that would be really bad.
been, or a very strategic photo to put
Right.
in to make your argument. I mean,
Alderman Dow?
Yes, especially the Elm Street, both ought to be taken care of structurally because, you know, it's one of these things, you pay me now or you pay me a heck of a lot more later. But I think the Elm Street garage with the Performing Arts Center is the things that people are concerned when they park in a parking garage, they want to feel that it's clean, they want to feel that it's safe. And these are things, if I would suggest that all the aldermen be invited to take a tour of either one of the garages. And believe me, you'll see that some of these changes need to be made and made quickly. Also, now's the time, you know, we keep hearing about the interest rate's gonna rise and rise and rise. Right now, we're doing bonding at a very reasonable rate. If we're gonna get into a 20-year repair for these garages, now's the time to do it. And again, if we did a bond for, it was just like around 6 million, 7 million, they don't go out and, as they explained the other night, they don't go out and buy the bond the next day. They buy the bonds as they need to refresh the money to pay the debt. So, and you'll be getting a whole presentation on bonding soon. But if we don't do something to fix the Elm Street garage now, it could jeopardize some of the use of the new Performing Arts Center. So I think we need to work on that garage sooner than later. And to Alderman Govia's point, you know, with everything going on School Street, including the new apartments who are gonna maybe using those garages, you know, we'll start hearing complaints if it's not taken care of. And I think if you take a walk in there, if you walk in the elevator and some of these stairwells and the areas behind the stairwells, you will see that they are in desperate need of cleaning, painting, and the lighting is another key point. I mean, and I'm surprised that we haven't had LED lights in there before because that's costing us money. So it should be very bright LED lights, and that's what makes people feel safer.
I would have to say, it seems we seem to be in unison with the, you moving forward with this. And I kind of agree with Alderman Dowd's crystal ball analysis of the economic future here. I would prioritize this because I do not know how long the current, looking historically at what the financial world's going to do with bondings. We have come to rely on that much, much more than our SURF account. And so therefore, I think it would be prudent to, while the going's good, I think we could save the taxpayers money for a worthwhile project if we expedite this a little bit to come in under the bond window. That make sure that sort of accidentally don't fall on us, so.
Understood, I hear.
Pending. Anybody else have anything else? Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I used to be a regular user of the High Street parking garage, but since COVID struck us, I've been working more from home and not using the garage as much. But when I was using it, I thought it was pretty well maintained. But I've heard some complaints about the cleanliness, and that's a pretty cheap fix, I think. If people are throwing trash around in the garage, picking up after them, seems a fairly inexpensive way of making the garage look more presentable. Are you getting enough money in your budget to hire enough people to maintain what we have now? I mean, you know, I understand you're coming in, you know, looking at a long-term project, you know, you're talking about millions of dollars to make necessary repairs. But then, you know, I remember last year, your budget was very low, and I think you let at least one person go. I don't know how many people you let go.
Yeah.
But, you know, we gotta, you know, when it comes budget time, we need you to stand up and say what you really need and not,
Well, what I, if I may,
Absolutely.
if I may, Mr. Chair, thank you. I hear you. What I also recognize is you have a lot of competing interests and needs here in the city. It's a balancing act. I'll tell you again, this year we will come in under guideline because, you know, we recognize that you have a limited pot of money that you need to spread around, and we are, and so you want to achieve a certain tax rate, and to do all of that, we have to be very fiscally judicious in how we use our resources. We try the best we can to be as efficient as possible. Yes, of course, we could always use additional resources. I know if Jill was here right now and had free reign, it's probably killing her not to be saying yes. But honestly, I think we would be doing this community a disservice to make such a decision now without actually having the management study done. We have Desmond Consulting retained. They're actually looking at some of the operational structure that you're talking about now. Let's hear what they have to say for some guidance, and then we can revisit that very issue.
Okay. I do have, I'll recognize Alderman Como, but first there's somebody online. Is that Mr. McKinney of the Building Department?
This is Alderman O'Brien.
Yes, I'll recognize you,
sir.
and then we'll go to, thank you.
So watching through this, I'm very interested in the discussion. I do want to give some background of this, is that, you know, a lot of our concerns from the Department of Building Safety stemmed back actually to the prior administration with Mayor Lozo, when we identified some concerns with parking garages. Many of those concerns involve cracking, spalling of concrete, structural members that are starting to show signs of wear that need to be addressed. As thankfully, through the studies that were brought forward by Tim Cummings and Jill Stansford, we've actually started to address that and identify our concerns from the Department of Building Safety. And as you've heard, is that in other communities, the departments have been forced to go to a level of condemning parking structures. And we don't want to go there. We brought our concerns forward. Those concerns are the degradation of concrete, the concerns with rebar that is deteriorating due to salt intrusion into the concrete, the leaking of water that if you walk through the garages on any given day during a rainstorm or during melting snow, you'll see the amount of water that's leaking through the building. The problem with that is that water also freezes, and we have a freeze-thaw effect that starts to fracture concrete, and it starts to expose the structural members to more of the salt that's brought in by the vehicles that drive into the garages. So this is a real concern of ours that really needs to be addressed. So I would stress that, you know, any amount that we can put into these buildings now is going to be a huge investment to keeping these buildings viable later. And you know, lighting is not a big concern of mine. Yep, it'd be great to have lighting that's safe and all of that. The real issue is the structural integrities of these buildings that we are starting to see degradation on, that we have to address. If we don't address it now, we are gonna lose these buildings in the next few years. And that's my personal opinion, my professional opinion as the building official for the city.
Thank you, Mr. McKinley, for sharing your expertise on this. Thank you. Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't belabor the point because as the chair has mentioned, it seems like we're all pretty much on the same page on this. My only comment would be the presentation seemed like it was split between two potential options. One of them more the slow burn over the course of the 10 years, and then the other one, if I understood it correctly, was a larger amount of work done in a shorter period of time, the 1 to 2 year. I would think that that would probably be in our best interest to get most of the work done sooner. And like some others have mentioned, I'd like to see, if not a formal proposal, but an estimate of something that would include the structural issues that we'd like to take care of, but also the cosmetics, the lighting, the cameras. Let's see what a potential lump sum might look like, and go from there.
Okay, other questions, members of the board? Alderman Dow.
Just real quick, to not do something right now is physically irresponsible. And we owe it to the taxpayers to make sure we protect these buildings and the safety, as Bill McKinney said. By the way, he'd be the guy that'd be condemning him if it went bad.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is, we have to be careful while talking about the structural integrity of these buildings. If people get the feeling that they're not safe, they're not gonna park there. So we need to ensure that the word is that there are things that need to be fixed, but we're gonna fix them.
I would like to thank my vice chair, Alderman Dow, for saying that. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, it's our watch. We are lands and buildings infrastructure. We're custodials to pass these buildings in good shape in the future on to future generations. So point well taken, thank you. Any other questions by members of the board? Director Cummings?
Yes, thank you. I just, some last parting comments. Jill and I are trying to be good stewards of these assets. I think one of the things I would be remiss not to point out is there is, this doesn't necessarily need to be entirely shouldered on the taxpayer. There is a revenue source that we could look into by charging some money for usage of the garage. That would help defray some of that capital cost. I would be remiss not to suggest that we look at that and analyze that, and that may be a plausible way to move forward. So that's not uncommon in other communities. But I appreciate having the opportunity to be here tonight to start this conversation. I want to just suggest that this is the beginning and not the end.
Your point well taken. Maybe we could follow the same line with the state of New Hampshire. They let their parking garage go down to,
Oh, God.
every time I park on it, I'm waiting to fall through, but that's another story. Alderman Clee?
Thank you. And to add what Alderman, to the chair has mentioned, the store's parking lot should be condemned to the point where they're putting netting there because pieces are falling down. I park on the very top because I feel if it's gonna go down, my car's gonna go down. I'd rather that than have pieces fall on it.
Oh, you could drive off it if you have an SUV.
Yeah, if it goes down far enough, I could just drive off of it. But yeah, that is one scary, scary garage. I do not ever want to see us get to that point. But to a point that you were making before, one of the first pages you talked about was the parking zone rates. And I know we tried, Alderman Laws tried to have these rates and so on increase. I think we seriously need to look at this. When I look at what we're paying here compared to what I'm seeing Manchester and even Concord doing, we are so far below. And I know we're gonna have an outcry from the public, but we truly, it's either pay through the taxpayers or pay it as a usage fee. And that's what the revenue is from the usage fee. And I don't think it'll scare people from downtown. But having said that, and I know you wouldn't know this off the top of your head, but it would be helpful if we knew how much below market rate for both leasing and meters we're doing. I think that is really important. I know we are. I pay so much more when I go to Manchester. And now Manchester, the Valley Street parking garage that I go to all the time, is Monday through Friday. It goes to like 8 o'clock at night. I usually get there about 6:37, so I only have to pay that short amount of money, but, and Saturdays and Sundays free. Maybe we do something like that, but I'd like to get a really good plan, so we could get an increase in revenue, and it's not a burden on the taxpayers. It's a usage fee then, so thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, we are actively working on that.
Yeah.
We will have more information and data through the Desmond study that will help, hopefully give you the data and then ultimately the confidence you need.
Thank you.
Yeah. There is, with Mr. Hill of Desmond, it's actively being pursued. There's, right now, to bring it anytime forward, there's a lot of options. It's really a very raw discussion at this particular point in time. Okay, seeing we do have other guests available, but I will entertain any other questions regarding the parking garages. Okay, seeing none. Ms. Stanfield, thank you so much. A very good presentation. I think it made a lot of us aware of what's going on there with our garages. I know you probably did, but can you, Mr. Cummings knows, can you make sure our administrative assistant, automatic liaison assistant, gets the copy of your presentation to the, to put it with the agenda, the minutes?
It was with the agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
you
Yes,
probably
you should
already
already
sent
have
it
It was
through.
included in the agenda.
Yeah, okay, just to make sure that it's on record, and that would be good. Mr. Cummings, you're not going far.
I'm just, I can stay here if you'd like, or I'm here.
Actually, I would stay there. The chairs are much more comfortable, I should say that. But,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Alderman Clegg.
I would like to thank Ms. Stansfield before she leaves. Although I have her on speed dial. She's one of so many people I have on speed dial. And before coming here, I was working with her on an issue that I'm having. And her people went out right away, stood there for 30 minutes, taking pictures and doing everything. So thank you so much for everything you do. And I appreciate with the low staff, and you do get complaints that, oh, we have to leave messages. And I tell people, because they're out trying to facilitate the parking and so on. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you again. Okay, I'll close that portion on parking garages, and I'd like to welcome the city engineer, Dan Hudson, who's going to give us a presentation on paving. Those that were at the, I think it was the budget meeting the other night.
Correct.
We did see it, but this is good for the public that did miss it. The city went through a period of years that really didn't touch the streets. I'm not going to have an opinion, like, say something like the spending cap had anything to do with it, but, you know, I won't say that. But now we seem to be aggressively fixing our streets, because if we take care of that, we do end up saving the taxpayers some money. It sounds like a lot of money, but having good infrastructure roads is keenly important. So therefore, perfect segue for you, Mr. Hudson. So there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Dan Hudson, City Engineer. With me tonight is Mark Saunders. He's a Senior Staff Engineer.
Welcome, Mark.
And Mark runs our paving program. So I'm going to attempt to share this presentation. And again, apologies for those that may have seen this or heard this at the public hearing and at the Budget Review Committee meeting. We even selected the same seats as that meeting, so it's kind of deja vu for us. But it's a topic that we're very happy to speak about. So again, we're here to speak about the multi-year paving project and ultimately a bond request. I'll see if I can get my show to advance here. Probably 3 clicks. Okay, so this evening, we'd like to briefly go through the paving history, review the network management methodology, preservation treatments, paving operation, future pavement conditions and budget needs, and finally conclusions. And we're happy to answer questions along the way or at the end. We're going to go pretty quick because many of you have seen this already, but we're happy to answer any questions you may have. So paving history, as Alderman O'Brien was referencing, prior to 2017, the city was paving about 6 to 8 miles annually. And then we embarked on a $75 million 10-year paving plan. And that first half of that plan was funded under R-17-092. And the first 5 years, we've resurfaced over 113 miles. Average PCI, which is a pavement condition index, it's a 0 to 100 score, with 100 being the best, 0 being the worst. That has increased 11 points since the beginning of the program, so excellent progress there. And we're back seeking to fund the second half of that program under our 22-020. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Engineer Saunders, who will present the details of the program.
Thank you. Nashville maintains around just over 300 miles of publicly accepted roadways. These 300 miles are broken up into about 1,500 segments, and each one of these segments gets a PCI score. As Dan mentioned, the score goes from 0 to 100, 100 being the best, 0 being on the low end. This score is directly related to a treatment band. As the score gets lower, the treatments get more expensive and extensive. It starts off in the higher range, which is Danforth in the top left. That is a do-nothing condition. In the bottom right is French Street, which is in base rehabilitation. The street selection process is very dynamic and requires coordination between multiple parties. The first step in the street selection process is that PCI data to develop a preliminary street list. Once that street list is developed, it needs to be cleared by all utilities. The engineering department, we work closely with both Liberty, Pennachuck, and in-house to clear these utilities. We send them look-ahead lists so that paving is the last operation on the road. And once all these items are completed, the final list is put together and sent out to bid.
Mr. Saunders, before you move on, we understand it, but a lot of us do hear from constituents that, oh, they were just digging up the street, and then a week later, they came and dug up the street again. And we know the answer, but this is your opportunity to explain to the public the different utilities, what's actually underneath our roads that needs to be coordinated.
Yeah, so in-house within our department, we have sewer and stormwater facilities that we have an extensive CCT program that we go through. We camera all the pipes and we either line them. If we find any issues where it needs a dig, we'll defer that street until we can come in and correct that issue and either do a point repair or a full replacement. As for the private utilities, which are Pennachuck and Liberty, they have, we coordinate with their capital programs so that they're running long stretches of pipe, and we're usually a year or two behind them, so we let them have the chance to get out. In addition with the capital program, we also have them out there. They do a leak survey. Pennachuck, during the nighttime hours when there's not a lot of traffic, they listen to the pipes to listen for any leaks. In Liberty, if you see the trucks drive around, they have cones on the front and they're actually smelling for natural gas leaks. They walk the streets, they run the streets with the list, and throughout the winter, once we start the process, they're constantly checking these streets. Unfortunately, leaks do happen after we pave, and they need to be corrected. But we do everything in our power to vet the utility network before we go in and pave the road.
And that's the next thing, if I may ask, Mr. Saunders. Murphy shows up at Murphy's Law. Things can go wrong in the times, you know. But is there not a 5-year moratorium in hope that once we pave the street, that this would not be dug up again for at least 5 years?
Yes, that is correct. We do have an ordinance for a moratorium, which if we have to cut into it through either a hardship or an emergency purpose, there is a more extensive repair versus our standard trench restoration. We do, a part of this program, we do send out postcards to all the abutters to the roadways to let them know that we are coming in, and that's their opportunity to give us a call to let us know that if they have any type of sewer work or they want to switch from oil to gas, to get that work up ahead so that they're not cutting into the street unless it's either a hardship or a emergency situation.
Very good, thank you.
So along with the paving program, we are looking to maintain the roads, keep the good roads good. So with this, we have regularly used crack sealing throughout the city. This treatment is currently being used. We just put out a contract for this application. But crack sealing is the application of an asphalt rubber compound to seal cracks to prevent moisture from entering the cracks and leading to further degradation. The next treatment we have listed is a fog seal. This is a full width topical rejuvenator that softens the asphalt binder to bind the aggregates to slow oxidation, limit raveling, and seal minor cracks. We piloted this last year, and we're looking to do about 5 miles of it this year. This is the next step in that preservation. Next on the list, we have microsurfacing. This is a proven treatment used by other neighboring communities, such as Manchester. This microsurfacing is a mixture of poly-modified asphalt emulsion and aggregates installed in 2 thin lifts on a properly prepared surface to provide skid resistance, restrict moisture intrusion, protect the underlying structure from oxidation and raveling, and to restore roadway. We are looking to do about 1 mile of this as a pilot to make sure that it's the right treatment for the community, and that we get the expected life out of it as well.
Okay. We do have a question from Alderman Jettie. Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these 4 photos, I assume they're examples of those 4 things?
Yes, correct.
Can
So
you identify
yes,
which is
top left, that is the crack sealing. To the right of that is the fog sealing. To the bottom left under the crack sealing, that is the micro surfacing. And then the last one that I kind of glanced over because we haven't had an active contract or a pilot program is the bonding wearing course. That's the bottom right. That treatment is as close to a hot mix asphalt overlay, and that's a gap graded aggregate with the emulsion that provides structural integrity and also restores the surface appearance and structure.
Could I follow up?
Follow up?
Yeah, the microsurfacing kind of reminds me of when we used to oil the streets. You know, there's a tanker truck full of oil that would go down the street, and then they'd put sand on top of it. That's not this, is it?
It's similar to that. It is a slurry. You do use that that emulsion, and then you have an aggregate as it becomes the wearing course. So it's a little more. It's not sand per se. It's an actual blended aggregate.
It's a sealant, like people seal their driveways, it's intended to rejuvenate the surface, seal the surface. Does a better job of sealing the entire surface versus a crack sealing, which just addresses the cracks. But it is, it's a preservation treatment. It's not intended to be a full wearing course. Like a bonded wearing course is very thin overlay, very rigid, but thin overlay. Not to the point that, you have issues with major elevation changes, but that's more of an overlay wearing course type of a product.
Thank you.
Is Alderman Clay?
Thank you, and I may be jumping the gun because I do remember the next slide talks about the selection, but one of the comments when you were talking about the beginning of the different types of road work or repair that you do, and the last one being that base rehabbing. Sometimes as an alderman, I'm sure some of the ones that have been here before, we get that call, why are they doing that street? It's not as bad as my street. So when you get to the next, if you could kind of address that in your choosing, I would appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I have this memorized.
All right, so when we go into the roads, we try to do a complete street approach. So in addition to resurfacing the roadway, we look to kind of leave the street finalized once the project is done. Items being addressed when possible are sidewalk access to comply with the American with Disabilities Act, roadway drainage, traffic detection, sign replacement, pavement markings, and casting replacement. So at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Engineer Hudson.
Yeah, I will just speak to the question that we had about the reclaim. When roads degrade, and so they're in those different treatment categories, the key is to try to catch the road and give it its proper treatment before it falls into the next most expensive category. When a road gets into the shape that it needs to be actually ground up and repaved completely, which is what we do with the reclaim operation, it's already in a very deteriorated state. So there are cases where people are on a road and we don't don't get there for a while, because that road's not gonna slide into a worse state, because it's already in the worst state. And of course, that is confusing for people, because they wonder why we're doing a road that maybe is obviously much better, has some cracking, but you know, their road's much worse. And that's intentional, and it's a cost-conscious measure for the long term for the city. Preserving what you have, catching it before it gets worse, in the long-term interest, is in the long-term financial interest of the city. But we do each year do some of the base rehab, because we need to fix those roads too. We just, you know, it takes us a while to get to some of those, so. So we're completed to date on this program. As I said at the outset, we've resurfaced over 113 miles on 520 streets, crack sealed over 102 miles on 400 streets, and we've increased the average PCI 11 points. And here's just the graph of that. Nice upward trend. This year, in the 22 paving program, we're gonna resurface 14 miles of roadway on 65 streets. We do have about 3 miles of carryover roadways that we couldn't complete last year due to utility issues or weather and those types of things. So we've carried that over, and we'll complete that this year as well. And we anticipate crack sealing about 16 miles, and then as Mark said, we'll do the fog sealing, microsurfacing later in the year. And the map shows all the roads that we've done to date, basically under the program. Looking ahead, we're requesting that bonding of the second 5 years, and we have some projections here. Shows continual increase of the PCI, and on the right is a chart of the backlog. Backlog is basically, you know, what funding would be needed to bring roads up to a good state. And obviously, as we spend money, those needs decrease. But it is important to note, there was a reference earlier to paint on the house. Things continually degrade. Pavement is not immune to degradation, so that happens over time. It happens through oxidation. Pavement gets more brittle as it ages, and you get those cracks and things like that, so that's why we try to do those rejuvenated treatments. But in addition, it's out there getting pounded by traffic every day, especially the arterial roadways. They see heavier trucking traffic, and that equates to more loading, and that constant loading, unloading as tires go across the pavement wears the pavement over time. So pavement does degrade. Get better performance in the neighborhood roads where you have less traffic. Roads in those areas, you may pave a road, it may be good for 20 years. Pave a road on arterial, maybe 10 to 12 years. So it all depends. So our recommendation, based upon what we've done to date and our current analysis, is that we recommend the city complete this 10-year paving program, bond the $7.5 million a year for the next 5 years, total of $37.5 million. That we continue to expand our routine and preventive maintenance. We made a lot of roads better, so it's very important that we expand those treatments, keep those roads in good condition, and that we continue this pavement management approach. It's a full cycle we do. Each year we go out and we assess 1/3 of the network and update the pavement condition index scores. So every 3 years we will visit every road. So we continually monitor that, track that over time to see how things change, how our system performs, and then set the plan for what treatments we need and where, and then execute those treatments. So that's our current plan. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you. I will open it up to questions. Alderman Dow.
Yeah, just, I don't think a lot of people understand that you use a different thickness, of course, of tar, if you will, on side streets versus like Amherst Street, which has 300 trucks an hour, and heavy trucks. So you use a much thicker course of tar.
Sure, Mr. Chair, I have Mr. Saunders.
Sure,
address that.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, so on Amherst Street, we'll do a deep mill versus a side street. We'll do a shallow mill. The shallow mill being around 2 inches, and the deeper mill being 3.5. But on the arterial streets, it's not just, we're not going the 3 inches. They were built with more as well. So we're getting a deeper mill to get some of the flaws out. So when we replace it, we come in with a 3/4 inch binder, and then we top that with the top coat to add that structural stability back to the arterials. And then on the residential roads, typically we mill out 2 inches and we put back 2 inches. And that's what we found, we found it to be successful in the first 5 years. As we're going through and surveying these streets, they've been holding up to time thus far.
Just one other question.
Follow up?
When when streets become public roads and from developments and you go in and start looking at the base, how often do you find that the base isn't what it should be? Do you actually inspect, these developments when they go in to make sure they're building the roads correctly, if they ever intend being a public road?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, we do. Nobody will like surprises. So, we do inspect the subdivision roads, ones that we know are planned to be accepted as public roads. We'll inspect those, and so we're usually not surprised by what we found there. But we have roads that have been around a long time and overlaid forever, and sometimes you never know what you are going to find. Sometimes we have roads we've cut and we found 10 inches of pavement. We've had roads that are older, maybe built before all that detailed inspection was being done, and they're 2 inches, 3 inches. So we find a lot of different things out there.
It seems funny, but to a street crew, it's an archaeological dig.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, Main Street had trolleys going up and down it, cobblestones, and I think, did we have a problem on Pine Hill Road that they resurfaced over a swamp? So it's unique that's out there. Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, there's been a lot of publicity in the news lately about, climate change and getting away from fossil fuels. So I know the main ingredient that's used in the repaving project is, petroleum-based products. But I've read that some places use a combination of recycled rubber tires, glass, different products that are recycled and part of that mix that's used for the roadway. I've heard that the rubber gives some flexibility that's better for frost heaves and that type of thing. Are you familiar with that technology? Is that anything that we've looked at and could take advantage of?
Mr. Chair, yes, we are familiar with that. That's something that, is becoming a bigger area of focus. Clearly, there's recycling methods and use of different materials. We will likely pilot some projects like that just to get a comfort level with it before we go put it out on Amherst Street, that type of thing. But we are familiar with that. Currently, our mix design allows for recycled asphalt in the mix as part of the design. So it may not be material from the same job, but these roads where we're milling, that material is not wasted typically. They take it back, they'll pulverize it, grind it up, and then use it in new mix design. They do get some credit by the asphalt that's in that mix that they ground up, but then they have to add some virgin liquid asphalt as well. We're always trying to find that balance of recycling as much as we can, but ending up with a good product in the end, because we do want it to last. We want to recycle, we want to be environmentally conscious, but we do want these roads to last. So yeah, we're willing to try different things, pilot them as those things come about.
Alderman Clay.
Yeah, I said thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In keeping with what Alderman Jettie had mentioned, I had asked this question a number of years ago, and one of the things that, I don't believe that I asked necessarily Public Works, but I asked up in Concord, and one of the things that they had kind of come back and told me was that we have issues here in the New England area, the north area, that some of those materials don't work with our freezing and thawing kind of, that they work really well down in Florida and in the south, but is that technology changed a little bit so that we could do something like that here in New England without having our roads degrade faster?
Yeah, I don't know as I have all the answers on that, something we'll need to investigate more, but we did go through a phase of a few years where companies were adjusting to using the recycled product, and we had, communities were having trouble because we were seeing some premature cracking as people learned what the limits were, how much product to use versus how much additional liquid asphalt to use. So all these things kind of go through, you know, an evolution process to figure out what works where. I know that there are, in New England, there are, you know, crumb rubber, basically, shimcoats being used on the lower volume roads, so I do know that's something that is used, and other treatments as well. But yeah, it's funny, I've been in different areas of the country, and it's a completely different mix sometimes, you know. You go to the desert, and they're using 12 inches of asphalt and or concrete even, so yeah, we're willing to try different things, like I said before, but we want to make sure what we do is good. So we talk to other communities about what they're doing, and then try to pilot things that we think may have application here.
Just one quick one.
Follow up?
I truly appreciate that, because I know that we had one year when we had some not so great contractors that kind of did a little bit of a bait and switch on some of us, and I don't want to have to, because we do hear it from the constituents, they just paid me, why are they back doing it again? So I appreciate you doing all that extra due diligence, so thank you.
Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I know, probably like many of my colleagues, since the spring started and the current year's program's begun, I've been getting some phone calls and emails from people asking the same questions, you know, why are these roads being done, not these roads? And I think most of us have a fairly good grasp on why that is, but is there a resource maybe online that the public can be directed to view the PCI, to see the grades of various roads and understand maybe where their road falls grade-wise as compared to similar roads in their neighborhood, so they might better understand why they're being passed over?
Yeah, we haven't published a document, but we're happy to, if anybody calls and want to know what their PCI is, we can look it up for them and tell them, that's fine. What we find is, we have lots of roads in similar categories, so, you know, people would look at that list and they'd say, well, I'm a 72, and this road's over there is a 72, why aren't we being done? Well, it could be for a whole variety of reasons, as Engineer Saunders was explaining. We have to do this in lockstep with utility improvements. We have our own issues. We have sewers that need to get evaluated, fixed. So, you know, Main Street right now is a 39, is that right?
I think it's a little more than that. But
A little
you're
lower than
close.
that, and there's been a lot of utility work, and of course, we're getting a lot of questions, why aren't we doing Main Street? And we do plan to do Main Street in the near future, but, you know, we had a sinkhole out there, last week, and so we're actually tonight, I think they're out there doing the final repair on that, so, clearly we want to avoid situations where we, spend those dollars and then have to go back and make those repairs. We can't always avoid those, but, there's all kinds of factors that go into how we select the roads. It is primarily PCI based to get us into the right range of treatment, but then, as I said, there's a whole bunch of other factors that go into it as well, so.
Thank you.
That was a sinkhole and not a fire department cistern.
No, it turns out it wasn't, so, yeah, Liberty was out there installing gas, and, they were jackhammering out some of the old concrete roadway, which is under the center section of the roadway, and the hammer just, you know, fell into a hole. Basically, under the road was a void, and there was a collapsed sewer pipe between Park and the Main Street sewer main, is what it ended up being. But so we mobilized our sewer contractor, SUR West, and they've tackled that problem. It's very challenging, as you can imagine. There's, you know, they've been working around water, gas, the old concrete roadway. We crossed an old stone box culvert, which runs down along the east side of the road. So you talked about archaeology. It certainly is that type of exercise. So right now we're going through an intensive investigation of Main Street, because we do know that we need to pave Main Street in the near future, and we want to make sure that we have our head around exactly what's there and do as much as we can to get it prepped to do so.
I'll shamefully say I'm interested in cobblestones, but anyways. But the other thing, I would like to mention too, that a lot of people don't realize that every time you bury a pipe under the ground, you put traffic on top of it. There's the spring and the winter, the thawing and the freezing, and these things actually move. And Liberty has different classifications of leaks. To say nothing leaks underneath there, it does leak. There's a lot going on, you know. They do their best, but there's a lot going on, and sometimes the paving is affected by what another utility has to say with how they rate that particular leak on whether they could do it, if you wanna.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. They all have their own capital programs. I know, there's a lot of old cast iron gas mains, and they're under PUC regulation to replace all those within about 5 years or so. So they're actively working on that problem. There are different grades of leaks. That's a PUC regulation thing as well. Grade 1 is an emergency. They go out and fix it right away. They don't ask us a question. They tell us after the fact, and we issue them the appropriate permits after the fact because they had to emergently respond. Grade 2, they have to fix within 6 months or within the same calendar year. So it's a less severe leak, and they also have to continue to monitor it, make sure it doesn't get worse. So all those factors come into play, and you know, those come up often at our Board of Public Works meetings where we have to grant those moratorium waivers on occasion. You know, unfortunately and reluctantly, because nobody wants to cut new pavement, but we do have to do that on occasion.
Very good. Other questions? Well, thank you very much. Very good presentation. Like I said to Director Cummings, I think you did already put it in with the administrative assistant, but if we can just have a copy of
Absolutely.
your presentation to go on file. The chair would love you to stay for the next part of what's.
I absolutely want to stay.
I
for
mean,
that,
I don't mean
so-
to make you blue or anything. But you're
I
welcome
wouldn't
to
miss it for
stay.
the world.
Mr. Saunders, you're welcome to stay too, if you so wish. So therefore, thank you very much for the presentation. Without objection, we received a communication this evening from Director Cummings on the paint color for extended outdoor dining. The original intention was for light red brick color, and it's rated into Pantheon Smart 18-1350 TCX, burnt brick or equivalent. I am already above my pay grade of choosing colors. But anyways, we do have some options. Alderman Dow.
Yeah, much as I'd like to make a motion to have Director Cummings pick the color, I won't do that to him.
I appreciate that.
However, I think the easiest and the safest thing to do is to give Director Cummings and Mr. Hudson and whoever else at BBW the authority to pick a comparable color that they can actually buy, unlike the one that was selected. We got too specific, and he has a template with very similar colors. I don't know that we need to go through 18 colors to try to narrow it down to, you know, as long as it's close to what was Director Shea gave us, I think we're good to go. So I'll
Thank
make
you,
that a
Alderman
motion.
Dowd. Alderman Dowd, I appreciate that, because looking at the light red brick color, I wonder what old sun would do to it in time. So I imagine something we need to look at is durability, safety is the #1 priority. So therefore, with Director Hudson and Director Cummings, did you have something to say, Alderman Como? No, on that. So I will entertain that motion that between,
Yeah, Director Cummings working with Director Hudson and BPW
well,
to come up with a comparable color.
okay. I would like to have, though, Director Cummings and Engineer Hudson weigh in on this, because I don't want to give them too big of a slice of pie here, that they're comfortable, okay? Because it does come under our perusal as a board, so.
There actually was another person.
If they're comfortable with that particular charge. And please speak frankly to advise us. Director Cummings?
Yeah, I'm happy to. What I didn't want to do was actually take the liberty that's being suggested right now without actually just giving a public discussion on it. I am more than happy with this charge or this direction and a public conversation. Happy to make the best assessment possible. I will absolutely take input from everyone, members of this committee, members of the Board of Public Works, Department of Public Works, the general public. I know Great American Downtown, as former executive director, had a strong interest in this subject. So, and then ultimately, what time is of the essence? Because we need to start painting. So we'll, we would make a very quick decision and get going on it, ideally tomorrow. So
Yeah.
I will, if the motion prevails, I'll make a couple phone calls in the morning, make sure I'm going in the right direction, and then otherwise, try to move forward.
Right, and that doesn't mean, it isn't, used the phrase the other night that the sun will come up, but, they're gonna get chipped, they're gonna get worn, other things, and maybe need to be repainted next year, so we may be having futuristic discussions on this. Engineer Hudson, do you have a comment on it?
Yeah, just that I would remove my name from it and just reference. Reference DPW, because, I don't know, is this myself, might be Director Photo that's involved in that decision, but yeah, I think I would support that motion because I think, we'll do the best we can to pick the comparable color and move forward.
I was pretty sure that you would delegate it to Andy or somebody else to, the ones that couldn't find the original color.
Engineer Hudson, I will most certainly withdraw, entertain to withdraw your name if you're serious about that.
Yeah, I am serious about
Okay.
that, because I think,
Make it DPW.
Yeah.
yeah, just reference
Okay,
DPW.
we'll put the
and,
BPW on that, so can the clerk make that particular change? The reason is, I know you have a keen eye working with traffic on the safety, so that's why I'd like to, why you were mentioned.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and the committees, and this committee and the board at full did incorporate the recommendations about reflectivity and those sorts of things, so we're comfortable that the paint and the additional reflectivity will provide for that safety that's requested.
Okay. Further comment?
I just have one issue, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, if I may.
No, you can't have your name taken off.
That was good. No, in all seriousness, I did want to ask a specific question. And I really am just taking the temperature of the committee. Would it be okay, or would it be acceptable if I took one or two of the barriers not on Main Street, on one of the side streets, and painted it a blue color? I have been, since this conversation, I've had repeatedly had people come up and say, I don't understand why they went with red. How come the committee didn't go with blue? I really can't answer that question other than the night of the meeting, there was a discussion, and so the consensus was a red color, and that is what it is. And so, so it was suggested that maybe we could take one or two of the barriers off to the side, paint them blue, just to kind of see what it would look like. And I said, I would be happy to have a public conversation about that I would not recommend it, because I understand that this has been discussed, but it wasn't for me to unilaterally make that decision, but happy to do that if it wouldn't upset the body.
All right,
Maker
well,
of the motion has no issue with you doing that.
right. I think what I would like to do is discharge the motion first, and then we'll have that discussion on that. Everybody in agreement? Yes, Alderman Clay.
Thank you, and you feel free to tell me that this is for the next conversation. But if I remember correctly from the meeting, the reason why they went with the brick red was so that it would kind of melt into the existing buildings. So when you choose to decide what you want to do, I would like to hear from Director Cummings as to what he feels. Say we can't have the brick red, what would meld into it, whether it be a blue, a green, or another red. So I just want to put that out there, and if that's for the next conversation, I'm fine with that.
Thank you, and I'd like to put out there that my wife has a tendency to green. Did you hear that, honey? I mentioned you.
I'm a blue girl, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Alderman Jettie?
I would just like to point out that, we had the task force, which was more than just this committee, passed a motion that it be the color that Commissioner Shea, specified. I mean, we started out with, red brick, and then he specified it to the color that, we ended up with, which is, it turns out it's unavailable. But it said, that color or equivalent. So when you start going to, green or blue, yellow, or any other color, I'm not an expert on colors, but, I don't see where blue is anywhere near the red brick that we voted on. So I would be against, our painting, samples and revisiting this whole issue. We spent how much time on this thing? It's
Well,
the red brick or equivalent, and I trust that you can come up with an equivalent that's gonna be, an equivalent, something close to that color.
Alderman Jettie, would like to remind you that the task force main charge was whether we were gonna have outdoor dining and some of the SEPT issues. And there were many, but some of the SEPT issues, they were germane, but not the main issue, whether to have outdoor seasonal dining or not. And one of those SEPT issues was the color that we brought up. But now that the task force committee has convened, has ruled, and no longer is in existence, and I don't see where this outdoor dining is under the perusal by city charter of the Committee of Infrastructure. I think we're quite capable as a committee of making this type of decision. And again, I respect the alderman, the point, but this is why a lot of us are kind of cringing. One person, my wife has one particular idea, I might have another, and somebody, Alderman Como here in the example, it's like wearing your shirt. What color am I gonna wear today? Did you wear the wrong one? Only when you don't match it with the proper tie. But, but the thing is, you could really get hung up on the color, and timing, it seems, and to be of an essence, because this is, what is today's date? April 27th. Outdoor dining could concede, when is the target date that we're hoping? Sometime in May. So time is nigh. And in the future, I'm not saying that we could have more time to get into the, another color change. We're only talking the paint job. Maybe we could look at it at that particular time. Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, the motion before us is to let Director Cummings working the BPW, pick a comparable color.
Right.
The side note after we vote on that is, can we paint a couple and put them on a side street just to see what they look like, but not change in the middle of the dining season, change the color of the barriers.
Right. Well, I thought you were asking separate to have a different color.
No.
Because I don't care how many colors there are, but,
No, just,
Okay.
let's do two on a side street, just to see what.
Oh,
it looks like.
that's why he didn't allow it. Now I completely understand. My mistake,
The motion on the
excuse
floor
me.
is to pick the comparable color for all the barriers.
Thank you, Alderman Dow, for the clarity. Now I got it. Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with Alderman Jettie on the point of the color that we selected. If I walk through Home Depot and I look at that wall of swatches, there might be 20 that they would call red brick, and I would never be able to tell the difference. So if this one particular Pantone number that we erroneously specified is unavailable, I'd have to think that there's something that, to my untrained eye, I would never be able to tell the difference, but it is available. So with respect to the motion that's before us, if we're just vague and we say, select an available red brick color, I think that we're okay. And to your point of a small sample, if I'm not mistaken, was it on West Pearl in front of I'm sorry, not West Pearl, Factory, where there was one location that might get just the two barriers that might be an okay location to pilot a different color, and it's not going to, you know, interfere with the rest of the aesthetic on Main Street because it's so far removed. I think that that would probably be something that we'd be fine with.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. I was gonna suggest either the Factory Street location or the Railroad Square location, which is up over by, yeah, exactly. That might be, to your point, not interfering with, I think what the goal was is to have a solid color along Main Street.
All right, follow up?
So with respect to the motion, I just want to make sure that I've captured this correctly. What I've got here is a motion to recommend that a light red brick color be chosen for the repainting of the barriers by Director Cummings in coordination with BPW. BPW or DPW?
DPW.
And just for
DPW.
clarification,
Not the
that
board,
seems to
not
fit
the
your
board, the
concerns of
department,
equivalency.
The department.
Correct, okay.
Just wanted to make sure I had it written down correctly.
Director Cummings?
I just want to clarify one word. Did you say light or did you say burnt?
I had, what was written here says light red brick color.
The prior authorization was burnt brick or equivalent.
All right, so I will strike out light and replace it with burnt and say burnt
Right.
red brick color. Alderman Dowd, is that,
Yes, that's fine.
Being a fireman, I like burnt.
you're not supposed to like burnt as a
Oh,
fireman.
sorry.
I thought smoked paprika was,
That's called being an arsonist, not a fireman.
I'm so confused, excuse me.
Okay, so the motion before us. is
Oh,
to
now
recommend-
I'm turning a different color, excuse me.
The motion before us is to recommend that a burnt red brick color be chosen for the repainting of the barriers by Director Cummings in coordination with the DPW.
Sounds good.
Everybody like it the way it is presented? Okay, discussion on the motion as read? Seeing none? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Nicely done. Oh, no.
30 minutes?
No, I love my wife, but she watches like the home shows, and to me, red is red. I mean, you know, I don't want to go there. You girls have such a keen, guys do too, I'm sure, but the keen eye, you know.
If I may.
Yeah,
Mr.
go
Chair.
ahead.
So my intention will be to take 2 barriers at the most on a side street, Factory, which hasn't been approved yet for the record, but if it does, that would be one of the streets I would look at, or Railroad Square by Matthews to paint a dark blue color just for visual purposes, so people could see what a dark blue could look like, so it could help inform a decision later on if one wanted to revisit this issue sometime in the future, next year, years after, whatever the case may be. If there is no objection to that or no real strong angst, I will do that, and I just didn't want to move in that direction and not have a discussion with you all to make sure that no one found that offensive.
Well, if I may say, as chairman of this committee, I'm hoping at some future time that we can liquidate the current barriers that we have. I do admit with some of the testimony we received from the public, and driving along the roads, I've seen some smaller versions that might have been adequate. But at the time when we did this, we had to take into account the number one was public safety. People are in a very undefended position when they're sitting out there dining, whether even on the sidewalk. You know, we see the tragedies on the news occasionally of people inside the 7-Eleven getting hit by a car. So the thing is, you know, safety was the paramount thing. I'm not saying we couldn't do a better job in the future. And Director Cummings, maybe we could have that conversation when the life expectancy of these things, which is probably a million years from now, but I don't know how long concrete lasts. You know, but we could do better and maybe start looking at a possible change to something more appropriate. So we could go along that. All right, anything else back, Alderman Jettie?
yeah, Mr. Chairman, so Director Cummings said if there was no objection, I would like to object. I think we chose a uniform color for a reason. And, I'm against our spending any money, sampling other colors and, putting other colors in different locations. I think we're just opening up a can of worms there. And I'm surprised that you would be interested you're frustrated enough about this whole discussion that you would, encourage, the possibility that we might, change color and undergo the expense of repainting them. Let's just stick with the color we have, see how it works out. If there's a lot of objection to it, maybe we could revisit it, but to put out, different samples now to just encourage further discussion on this issue, I'm against it. I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, Alderman Jettie, there's two ways you could do this. Your objection can be noted, or you can make a motion on whether Director Cumming has the charge.
Well, I think right now he doesn't have a charge.
I think
said if
he
there was no
was
objection,
kind of
I
under the
objected.
assumption, so therefore we're looking for a motion. Okay, and Alderman Dow, do you want to try this one?
Just passed the original motion, right?
Huh?
We passed the original motion.
Pass the original motion.
So I'll make a motion that we allow Director Cummings with DPW to paint two of them blue, just to get an idea of what they would look like for the future.
Okay, Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Alderman Jettie raised a point that I hadn't really considered, and that is the can of worms. And I hadn't thought about it, but the way he phrased it kind of made me think that if we do offer options, it's going to encourage people to, have a thought one way or the other, and then we could be back here next winter having the same discussion all over again. So maybe it's possible that we should just stick with what was chosen and ride that out.
Alderman Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think one of the comments that Director Cummings made towards the beginning was that he was getting a lot of pushback from some of the owners of the buildings and so on that are saying, you made this decision, and while I agree, the task force worked very hard to make the decision, and I've been making a joke about the time it took. We did not go around and ask all the businesses what they may or may not want. One of the things I remember when the discussion came up about blue, it was like, or black or any of that type of nature, was, but would it fit in with the buildings? And that's why you all came up with, the task force came up with the burnt red and the Brook style. And I think that was a really good choice on your part, because you were trying to make it meld in as much as possible. I too have heard from a few of the owners of even the buildings that are downtown, and said that they would, much to my chagrin, they wanted the grassy green kind of look, so it would give a feeling of that there was greenery there and so on. My comment was, we're not going to paint blades of grass. It's going to be a single color, and that's what it's going to be. And I agree, the color should be uniform all through Main Street. I don't see the harm, although I do take note to what Alderman Jettie said. If we start putting out that there are choices there, then we're gonna get a lot of, well, I want green, I want blue, I want this. But I don't see the harm in doing that, because if I'm not mistaken, Director Cummings, and please correct me if I'm wrong, every year we're going to have to paint these. I agree, we don't wanna have an hour discussion as to what color to paint them every year, but it wouldn't hurt for us to see that. It may be that these people are gonna come back forward and say, I think the blue fits much better than this red. The red is too bright. I know for me, personally, I'm one of these people who don't really like reds, yellows, or oranges. They make me feel tense and angry. Blues, greens, and so on make me feel more relaxed. So maybe that might be the situation. So I don't see the harm in it. I do take to what Alderman Jettie said as being very accurate. The minute we put out another color, you're gonna get all these people going, well, I want blue, I want purple, I want green. Let's do purple for Nashua South, let's do green for Bishop Girton, let's do blue for, Nashua North.
That could happen.
Yes, exactly, and they could say, let's do this and that. So yes, you are gonna get those things, and that is the chance that you take, but where we have to paint them every year, I don't see the harm in just putting up a couple samples and see how they fit in with the facades, but I'm not on this committee, it's just my comments.
Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, a couple of questions to Director Cummings. Is it true that the pushback, you're getting a lot of pushback about the color, and the pushback is coming from the merchants?
Some merchants, yes, but definitely from downtown businesses, stakeholders, restaurants, merchants, and property owners have raised it.
Okay, can I ask another question?
Yeah, follow up?
And is it true that we're gonna have to repaint these every year?
I would think we would have to repaint these. I don't know if we'll have to repaint them completely, but touches, absolutely. We will have to look at repainting them to a degree every single year.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to amend the motion, and the, whatever colors other than the, the standard color that we end up picking. If somebody wants a different color, that they do it at their expense, not the city's expense.
Okay. The motion is that if somebody wants to paint it their own particular color, it'll be at the expense of the,
There's another motion on the floor.
well,
His motion was
Unless
to
it's
amend
an
your motion.
amendment.
it's to amend it. It's a motion to amend.
Discussion?
Okay, so did I say it correctly? You have it?
I'm getting there, but I have it.
Okay. You want to speak to your motion?
No, I think I've
Okay.
said enough about it.
I would like to just speak, I just want to say that, Alderman Jettie, you have convinced me, in some of the things that you brought up. I'm more concerned, let's get through this year. We went through a heck of a rigmarole with this. And I think we went through a lot of difficulties, but yet we got what we thought we were doing the best for it seemed to be the majority, people who did enjoy the outdoor dining. Yes, some people weren't satisfied, not particularly happy. I think the fact that we have seasonal outdoor dining, folks, let's be grateful at least we went that far. We got it. Don't worry about the color. We could fix that in December when we're all having our eggnog in a little bit more jovial type of way. So I am not going to support this motion, nor I support I would not support the amendment or the additional motion. In other words, I'm more in favor, just let's get through this year and steam forward. Alderman Gouveia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree. I think we just have to go and get it done, get these barriers painted. I think the last thing we're looking for now is to have barriers all up and down Main Street looking like a bag of Skittles, where it's just a bunch of colors all next to each other. I think one uniform color will look good, so I'll be following the same thing. Yeah, thank you.
Alderman Como.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to echo what Alderman Gouveia just said, I worry that the amendment might lend to the belief that a business on Main Street could say, well, I want my barriers to be yellow and I'm willing to pony up the money. And I feel like that might just be another can of worms that we don't want to get into. So I would say no to the amendment and no to the original motion as well.
Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion failed, the amendment fails. On the main motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Nay.
Nay.
Motion fails. Director Cummings, feel free to blame us.
No, if I could, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Absolutely.
So just to clarify, the reason why I suggested without objection is because I was gonna say with objection. I was just gonna proceed as is, and I understood that to be the case. And clearly with objection, I wouldn't wanna deviate from what was previously discussed. During my comments, I actually specifically said I would not recommend this, because I'm here to be a facilitator of the process, and I'm only kind of lamenting on this point because I think it gets forgotten sometimes that city staff here are trying to help you all get to decisions. To some degree, I'm Switzerland. I'll make a recommendation, I'll tell you a best practice, but at the end of the day, you know, you need to make this decision, and just because I bring a conversation before you doesn't mean that I have a certain opinion on something. So, anyway, I just wanted to make sure that that was clear for the record.
Point well taken. Thank you. Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, given the fact that DPW has several of these barriers in the new construction site on the new DPW building, if they want to paint a couple blue and keep them at the landfill, see what they look like. I have no problem with that, but that's their decision.
Mm-hmm. Alderman Como?
And yeah, to Alderman Dowd's point, we're using fewer this year than we did last year, so there should be plenty of leftovers in storage at the landfill, so feel free to do your row of Skittles out there, and we can all tour it later to see what every different color looks like, if that's, you know, something that would please you.
Excellent, thank you.
I would just like to say on the matter of color, we have a wonderful organization of Miss Mary Lou Blaisdell's organization of the downtown community and the businesses. And we're very fortunate to welcome the new Great American Downtown, a new director of Carolyn Wally. I think this is an excellent charge for them if there seems to be debate on the issue in the as we go forward. I think that's something that they can do, and I would like the clerk and my vice chair and Director Cummings to remind my forgetful self that maybe we should call them in at a particular point, and you know, I could speak to them and ask them if they want to get involved with this. I think you could, Mr. Cummings, too, and say we would like a report.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be heavy, but
Right,
see
understood.
what, after they get painted, after they've been up for a while, I'd be interested to see what the flavor of the community is with it. And I think that would satisfy it. Is that good with everybody? So ordered. Beautiful. Back to the agenda, yes. Unfinished business.
There is none.
New business resolutions.
There are none.
New business ordinances.
There are none.
Tabled in committee.
There is none.
General discussion. Anybody has anything for the general with the board? Seeing none. Public comment.
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Lori Ortolano from 1 Berkeley Street. A couple of things. You know, the whole color issue on the barriers, it was your decision, not the downtown merchants. They didn't get away. You know, I don't get away and vote. Personally, I hate your color, but I don't get to have an opinion. I thought Michael Buckley was spot on with the sage green for a lot of reasons. And the dark blue was rejected because of the specific heat capacity of that paint. There was concern expressed that it would be very, very hot in the sun. It would give off a lot of radiative heat. And I agree with that. Dark colors aren't good. Can't stand your red. I don't get a vote. And neither do the merchants downtown. You made a decision. And I think we stick with it. And as far as having to paint them every year, I'm frankly shocked to hear that and learn it. I really think maybe a little tough, but I wouldn't anticipate that they need to be painted. Regarding the paving project, I didn't hear anyone talk about the patching of roads. And if you go out on Broad Street and you look at a road that's freshly paved like Broad Street, you're going to see 5 or 6 cut-ins between Coliseum Ave and the Broad Street Elementary School. And those cut-ins are not patched according to the law and the requirements for patching. I think we have to pay attention to that. They're not crack sealing around the cuts when they put them in. And I think different vendors are doing different jobs as far as the compacted materials they're putting down and the sealing on that. And I think we should have some enforcement of that because it makes a big difference on the wear and tear of the road. As far as the parking garage goes, I like your parking study. You know, improving the garages is a must. Garages are high wear buildings because of salt erosion in a New England environment. They fall apart readily and rapidly, a lot of rust issues in parking garages. But I would like to see the numbers developed much more. It's unacceptable to me that the costs are based on pre-pandemic numbers. I don't see any reason why we can't have accurate costs with the breakout of lighting and all the structural information in there. I don't want to guess throw around an extra million goes on because of, you know, material costs. These numbers need to be well developed and they need to be well done. And I would want to see that kind of development in those cost quotes before the public
30
is
seconds.
asking money to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing no one, remarks by Alderman. Alderman Jettie.
Yeah, just briefly, I just want the public to know that there is it's 5 years, right? The moratorium on, after we pave a road, there's a 5-year moratorium. You can't cut into it without the permission of the Board of Public Works. This is under the jurisdiction of the Board of Public Works, not the alderman. So, it's the Board of Public Works that decides whether or not permission will be granted to cut into the road during the moratorium. And it's the Board of Public Works that judges whether or not the patch, they specify the requirements of the patch. They've got regulations about that and they enforce those regulations, or if they don't, it's the Board of Public Works that's doing it, not the Board of Aldermen. So I just want to clarify that for the public. If they've got a complaint about that process, it's the Board of Public Works that they should be talking to.
Thank you. Alderman Theobald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say a couple things about this whole color thing. I want to thank you guys for not allowing us to get back to the Board of Aldermen, because I don't want to deal with it anymore. And if I was someone that was watching this, and I wasn't part of the board, I would have dropped off an hour ago. I think, bringing up this thing again, we had to speak an hour about basically coming to a decision to make the color basically the same thing we already decided, but a little different, is why I think people don't want to watch us or deal with city government. We got other things that we should be worrying about. This could have been a 2-minute discussion, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I think I was just, we got to be better about what we do. So that's what I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else online, any other alderman with comment? Seeing none.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Alderman Jettie again.
I just want to thank Alderman Tebow for his critique of our meeting. I appreciate it very much.
Well, I mean, I don't understand where he's saying people don't watch us. Aren't we like the Peacock channel? Full color? I remember when TV used to be in black and white, but we won't go there. Plus, to watch the Bruins game, you had to turn the top dial and that little, never mind. Okay. You guys are spoiled today. Okay. Seeing, before we get completely silly, I'm going to turn to Alderman Dow. Do you have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn is in order. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, it's close the meeting at 9:03. Thank you, everybody.
Recording is off.
I do think it's important.